Today I am going to share with you Birth of Amanda. So if you are new to the channel, then please consider subscribing. It's just so difficult to imagine how much my life has changed in such a short space of time. Please let me explain. My name is Amanda Duval, or at least it has been for the last 9 months. I am sitting here at my fiancé's writing bureau in the large, well-appointed library of his manor house, looking out at the sunlight streaming through the large, ornate French windows, admiring the patchwork quilt that is the rolling Derbyshire hills. I feel happier and luckier than I have ever felt before. I could almost cry with joy at the wonderful situation I find myself in. Steve, my fiancé, is very wealthy and very generous, so it will come as no surprise to you to hear that I am wearing an exquisite silk ivory blouse, coordinating beige knee-length Chanel skirt, and a pair of wonderfully elegant 2-inch court shoes with diamante decoration. Underneath, I have on the sexy white lace Janet Rager lingerie delicately supporting my sheer stockings that Steve insists I wear when he is around. My skillfully applied makeup, manicured nails, and collar-length auburn hair, which has been coiffured into a sexy style by Leslie, my personal assistant, set off this tranquil and relaxed scene which I see around me. I know just what you are thinking at this point. Here's another shallow, stuck-up, spoilt gold-digging that's had it laid on a plate by her rich boyfriend. Well, the last bit is certainly true. Steve is so kind and gentle and gives me anything I want. Within reason, of course, however, it was not always this way, and it completely boggles my mind when I think back just 12 months or so when my life changed direction with some unexpected chance events. Life was not bad, but then again, it wasn't that good either. I got on with the day-to-day drudgery of life in a small Scottish town, working at the local biscuit factory, with all the other 20-somethings who hadn't bothered to do anything with their lives. Work, eat, sleep was all I seemed to do. Hiding myself in my room, my head and heart filled with dreams and expectations that I knew could never be fulfilled. My parents' small house was quiet, but the atmosphere was often filled with a heavy resentment of my continued presence. And then, the first turn of events. Mr. O'Hare, the general manager at the factory, called everyone to the shop floor and promptly and unsympathetically announced that the factory was to close and production moved to Poland. At this juncture, I didn't know whether to be happy or sad, but the truth was, as it invariably is with most of us in these situations, I was both sad at being unemployed and ecstatic at not having to make biscuits anymore. Economic reality soon became my father's overriding concern, and on an ever-increasing basis, he let me know in no uncertain terms that I either get a job or get lost. Mother agreed with him, although she loved having me around during the day to help with the domestic chores. An opportunity for my career development arose when Mr. O'Hare arrived at our door and announced, he seemed to take pleasure in announcing things, that the company, out of the goodness of their hearts, would fund a retraining scheme for a few ex-employees, and I had been chosen. Mother insisted she had nothing to do with it, despite her regular bridge lessons with Mr. O'Hare. Never one to look a gift horse in the mouth, I agreed, and in no time at all I was shunted off for a 4-week course in How to Become an Instant Plumber. This is where the second happenstance occurred, which was to alter my destiny. The course took place 400 miles away in England, and Mr. O'Hare was kind enough to arrange a convenient B&B close by the training establishment. The room I was in was very basic, but large and adequate. On the third morning, as I was leaving to walk to the training center, Eddie, the proprietor of the B&B, announced that I had to swap rooms that day and that the girls would do it. Catching me unawares, I said fine, and continued on for the day's dull activities. It was only during the second lesson of the day on fabricating a solder joint that horror gripped me, when I suddenly realized what I had failed to do in my room. I had left all my female clothes on top of my case and around the room. I was suddenly gripped in the midst of a panic attack, a cold sweat. I could feel the blood pumping violently up my neck and around my head. I had left myself open to exposure for the first time. Hundreds of questions were racing through my mind. I was trying desperately to rationalize the situation, hoping, praying that no one would find out that I liked to dress up in woman's clothes. The walk back that evening was a very slow one indeed. Part of me was saying, don't go back, go home to your safety zone, Mom will understand. Part was saying, perhaps they haven't touched your room. But when I arrived at the B&B, Pandora's box was firmly open on the smiling faces of the 3-woman greeting committee. There was Eddie's wife, Rose, and her 2 daughters, Tanya and Estelle, all 3 of them grinning from ear to ear like Cheshire cats that had just finished off the cream. I knew in that instant my life had changed, but to what extent I was about to find out. Estelle was the first to shatter the painful silence as she turned to Tanya and said, "Oh, look, Duck, she's gone all red." This made me giggle nervously and started a chain reaction which had us all laughing in an instant. Rose winked at me and nodded at the girls and went on her way. Estelle gently took my hand and led me off to her bedroom, to where I silently and compliantly allowed myself to go. I have to add at this point that I was feeling rather excited, not only at the as-yet unclear prospect of what they might do, but the sheer thrill of interacting with human company, which I had missed at home. As we entered the large, pink, girly abode, I was gently offered on the single bed with Estelle sitting comfortingly close and Tanya standing passively by. Estelle turned to me and said, "How long have wanted to be a lass?" in her thick, soothing northern accent. Still nervous, I blushed and blurted out in sobbing tones, "As long as I can remember." This seemed to do the trick, bringing out the mothering instinct in Estelle, who threw her arms round me and held me on the bed for what seemed like an age. Despite the adrenaline rush and emotional turmoil seething through me, I was still rational enough to take in the scene, and I distinctly remember trying to figure out what size clothes the girls would take, Tanya a 12, and Estelle perhaps a 14. "Don't you worry about a thing, ducks. We'll help you all we can," piped up Tanya, to which I submissively replied, "Oh, thank you, you're both very kind." The girls released me from their clutches, and as I exited the door, Estelle said that they were taking me somewhere special tomorrow evening, so I was to make sure I was smooth as possible, which thankfully I was already, because if there is one thing I detest, it's body hair. The day at plumber school was tedious, as my mind was racing with expectation of what would happen in the evening. At 6 p.m., Tanya led me into Rose's car and she drove us several miles to a small shop front. The sign above the shop read, "Ten Toes." I was taken through the shop to a dressing room at the back where Estelle was waiting with a tall, elegant woman introduced to me as Colette. My heart was pounding my throat dry as Colette matter-of-factly announced that she was going to transform me into a stunning woman. Colette could see the fear and nervousness I was showing and tried to put me at ease with gentle compliments, telling me how slim I was and what a great figure I was going to have and what beautiful skin I had, and best of all, she said I had the most wonderful facial features. Estelle told me to undress in a cubicle and put on the padded pants and black tights which were folded on a chair. This I did, squeezing myself into the pants, tucking my manhood away. Colette came in next, carrying a black corset, which she wrapped around my stomach and told me to fasten the front while she pulled tight and laced up the back. I felt my ribs squash together and tummy disappear as Colette pulled hard. She guided my arms into matching black bra, which she filled with latex breast forms and fastened at the back. It felt strange and wonderful having breasts, and I couldn't stop myself from having a good grope. I could hear girlish giggling from outside the cubicle, but I was too preoccupied to take much notice. My attention was grabbed when Colette took hold of my hand and pulled me out of the cubicle. "You look great, sweetheart. Now for the fun part. Let's see what sexy clothes we can get you." I was led into a large dressing room, which contained racks of clothes neatly laid out in arrangements of types, sizes, and colors. I stared around in amazement with Colette and the girls looking on. Tanya jumped forward and grabbed a short red mini dress, exclaiming, "She's got to be a size 12. "Yes," agreed Colette, "but not that dress. This little angel needs something more elegant." Colette stood in front of me and drew her hands down over my hourglass figure, making a pleasing sound as she did so. "Well, I think it will have to be a sexy suit for you, young lady. "What do you say?" she inquired. At this point, I was putty in her hands and piped up with something silly and obsequious like, "Whatever you say, miss." She reached over to a rack of blouses and pulled out a white satin number with a big collar and cuffs and proceeded to wrap it around me and fasten it at the front. It fitted perfectly, and I had a sudden thought that this was not the first time Colette had done this. She then reached for a charcoal business suit and asked me to step into the skirt, which she pulled up, twisted round, fastened and arranged in the correct manner, with the split high up my left leg. It felt great, tight around the waist, and bum and loose down to my knee. I couldn't help but wiggle my bottom, which made the two onlookers giggle. "Good," announced Colette, and she led me through to a dressing table and sat me down in front of a large mirror. I stared at my reflection, thinking, "What the hell are you doing? If anyone back at home could see you, you'd get the shit kicked out of you." I drew my hands gently down the sides of my skirt and eased my fingers under the split of the skirt, which gave me a real thrill. Colette opened a large box of makeup and got to work. She held my head, looked at my reflection in the mirror, and said, "Say bye-bye, sweetheart." And the funny thing is, it was at this moment in my life that I changed forever. In just 15 short minutes, with Colette's makeup skills finished off with a gorgeous shoulder-length brunette wig, I looked in the mirror and fashioned a smile on my face broader than had ever been there before. The beautiful, sexy girl looking back at me, was vibrant, strong, and happy. Amanda was born, and she knew as well as I did in that moment that there was no turning back. I was content to take a back seat, while Amanda had a whole world of excitement and discovery to explore. I stood up, turned to Colette, and embraced her. "Thank you, Colette, you've done a fantastic job." Tanya and Estelle came in at this moment and almost choked as they stared open-mouthed at my new appearance. I laughed at this and announced that I needed some heels, jewelry, and my nails done. Tanya scampered off to fetch some shoes as I posed in the mirror, looking at my femininity from every angle. That's it for today. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you do, then be sure to subscribe for more story like this and show your support on Patreon.